The big Forex player's MT5 expert advisor is one of the EAs put out by one of the most prolific developers on the MQL5 marketplace. This developer is a bit controversial, with some of their bots being loved, but some of them being seen to not exactly be what users expect. So I'm excited to dive into this one to see how it works. Is there actually a real strategy behind it? As well as try and decipher some of the nuances behind what the bot strategy is. This video is sponsored by Prosperity Algo and our free Golden Time Bomb Expert Advisor. Do you want to make 100+% annual returns through automating the London breakout and the opening range breakout? Then click the link in the description. So the big Forex player's expert advisor is put out by Ms. Marzina Maria Smit, and this is a developer behind the GBP USD bot, and they've been around for a long time on the MQL5 marketplace. And my common critique with these guys is that their backtests never work if you use the every tick based on real ticks. And essentially they kind of pry on the fact that many beginners don't know how to backtest properly. So when they run a backtest, it looks beautiful, like amazing. However, when you actually run the strategy itself, it's a bit of a different system. But as I kind of learn more about the community and I chat with other traders, my understanding is that many of her bots actually do follow real strategies, and they actually do perform okay live. However, the backtest is just not in any way related to what you see live. So that always makes it a bit harder to evaluate these systems. But perhaps from the sales page, we can actually kind of glimpse a little bit how this bot would work. And really, I think the main, at least the marketing premise behind it, is that they're saying that this bot uses the positioning of large traders, and specifically the biggest banks, in order to determine the trend, or to determine essentially if there's more of a long or a short bias. And don't get me wrong, this is actually kind of possible to do. In my Longbow fund manager expert advisor, I do this, but I very clearly use the commitment of traders report in order to actually look at the positioning of large speculators. I don't actually use the banks per se, I use large speculators, which would represent more like commodity trading advisors, managed funds, and more like speculative investment profiles, less so banks per se, many of which you can't necessarily do prop trading anymore due to regulatory restrictions. But I digress. This type of strategy is possible, but I'm not so sure if she's actually doing it. So that's once again kind of the biggest caveat here. Specifically also as well, along with the bias being set by the big bank positioning, you can also use, or this bot also uses quite a few different indicators, including the RSI, the MACD, and the stochastic, in order to make its trading decisions. And supposedly it is a multi-currency bot, and it's based on price action and different strengths. So all of this looks like a real strategy. There could be something here, like for instance, the RSI could be the trigger, and the MACD and the stochastics could be the filters, and they could be using actually a fundamental filter or bias determining function on top of all of it to build a fairly holistic expert advisor. So at least from the sales page, they are writing about a real strategy. However, what I don't like about this developer is they never provide live signals. They say, hey, please go to our website and check it out. So I did just that. We can go to their website here, and they have price, they have photos, information, feature, but unless I'm missing something, I don't think there's any actually live signal. And that's not particularly helpful, because particularly if we're unable to accurately backtest it and there's no live signal, that's not really a great sign. And I've also heard from some users in our community that if you look at her actual, her live signals, they tend to be fairly manipulated, and that certain positions which go into loss magically close themselves, or that the entry and exit conditions of a strategy change if the position would have gone into loss. So what I mean by that is let's say the particular bot that the gentleman was telling me about was the GBP USD bot. And typically it would close after, let's say, 5 points in profit. And your stop loss would be at 10 points away from that. And in the event, in the back test, that a position would have gone into loss, and instead of hitting stop loss after 10 points, the bot would wait for the position to go to 20 points, and then it would close the trade. So essentially the treatment, the rules change if a position would have been a loser. And that seems to illustrate some manipulation. So perhaps there is a bit of that going on here. But it's always good to give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe there is a real trading strategy here. So now let's go and dive into MetaTrader to see if we can learn anything else. And almost all of her backtests look like this. We're just seeing an enormous cluster of trades, which just happen in very rapid succession from each other. And I ran this on the Euro USD. Let me go down to the M5 perhaps, and we can see some trades in a bit more clarity. Let me see here real quick when exactly they're showing up. Okay, let me just zoom in on a particular day. Maybe that'll be helpful. Pardon my speed here. Or we can just go and check here for a day. Let's check the, I guess we ran out of leverage, so it stopped trading because we blew the account. So here we go. Let's actually try a different day. Let's try the 20th. And there we go. So now we're seeing essentially they're opening up a whole cluster of trades at the same time after an impulse. And they tend to do this because this type of strategy works rather well if you don't have any spreads. So effectively what she's doing is that every time there's a candle impulse, they just rapidly open a bunch of little trades. And if we look at the report here, we can see that this is obviously not working and we're losing a lot of money because of the fact that the actual average profit rate is just so minute, and most likely the spreads are causing us that we're losing pretty much all the trades. But what you can do now is keep in mind this is the back test. We're going to zero, and that's why it stopped trading. And if we were to switch from every tick based on real ticks to every tick, we can now take a look at this back test and see how it looks instead. And as you guys can obviously see, we are making insane amounts of money, and this is an exceptionally profitable test. And that's because this type of backtest manipulation, which is just like open a crazy amount of trades really rapidly and close with extremely minute profit targets, only works if there's no spreads. So this is what this developer is doing. I won't even run a visual backtest because I venture that the strategy which she's running is completely different than the backtest. I think they just have almost like a standardized backtest code, where it's like with almost all of their robots, they just do this like rapid fire trading strategy every time that you run a backtest. And in MQL5, it's fairly easy to toggle between backtest mode and live mode. So I think that when they run live, they likely are running a strategy similar to the one which they have on the website, which is based on like an RSI, a MACD, and the stochastic indicator. But when it's running in a backtest mode, it's just making like quadrillions of little trades, and that's what's giving us this beautiful equity curve if we negate spreads. So my takeaway here is that honestly, we have no idea how to backtest this bot because we can't backtest it accurately and we have no live signal. So this would purely be on taking the word of the developer because we just can't assess if there's anything here. Therefore, I probably would not buy this bot personally, just because the level of manipulation does not really speak to somebody's trustworthiness. And at the same time, in terms of if she's using big bank positioning, I highly doubt it, because if they're using these types of manipulation techniques, they're probably not going through the effort to make some sort of like more fundamental based filter to it. You can use COT data. Technically, you could use even like bank data from Bloomberg, but I highly doubt that the vast majority of Forex traders have access to that. I used to work at a bond fund, and you can essentially see with certain types of securities like who's holding what, provided you have Bloomberg access. But unfortunately, most people who are in the retail Forex space just don't have that data, and rightfully so. It's extremely expensive. So anyway, guys, this bot, not a great one. Definitely stay away. There's better bots in the marketplace. Let me know your feedback, and love to hear from you guys in the comments. Take care.